When I was a child, I longed for adventure. I'm sure I am not the only one. Youth gives you a confidence to seek a challenge. Life embitters you along the way, so when the opportunity of an adventure lands in your lap, it is to be grasped with both hands. When I first came to Coldford, it was in search of an adventure. I was told the Shady City was where the story was to be found. Now I have the chance to seek much further afield. Thanks to my good friend Dan Lars, a documentarian and talented writer in his own right, I was approached with a story that would make any writer salivate. It had daring feats of skill, displays of courage and true tests of loyalty and friendship. These are the elements that make any adventure. It also had 3 powder-addicted frat boys over which so much trouble had been caused and money spent. However, just imagine the adventure that was to be had. Who would have known searching for 3 airheaded, overindulged bros would open the pages to a story that goes beyond Coldford City. I am reporter Sam Crusoe, and this is the Good Gang mission to the Great States. Before we rush off to lands afar, our story begins somewhere a little closer to home. The island of Halffield Bay has become something of a place in infamy. It is home to the cult Church of St. Wiggin. Rumours of human trafficking, ghastly sacrifices, and a brainwashed congregation were rife. Agent John Reynolds was at a stalemate with the church's zealous leader, Dominic Cole, at this time of writing, so currently all was quiet on the rain-soaked beaches. Our story begins with 2 Wiggin members walking along the bay towards their commune. As a courting couple, they were enjoying the starlit sky, unspoiled by Coldford pollution. Their wedding day was fast approaching, so it was like St. Wiggin himself had told the moon to shine in the fat romantic way that it did. The Wiggin girl took her husband-to-be's arm. "Isn't the sky so pretty, Noah?" she said. "It is beautiful, Judith," Noah agreed heartily. "St. Wiggin has truly blessed us this night." "So pretty," Judith cooed again. "Praise Wiggin." "Praise Wiggin," Noah sighed. They walked along a little further. They drew closer to the commune they called home. "Judith," Noah asked, "is that music I hear?" "I think it is," Judith responded. "Is someone having a party?" It sounded more like someone trying to break down a wall than it did playing an assortment of instruments. To an attuned lifelong city dweller, it would have given the impression of some kind of monster attack. I can only imagine how it would have seemed to the 2 naive members of a religious cult who had never stepped off the island in a day in their lives. Noah clutched Judith's affianced hand. They started to retreat a little back towards the shoreline. "In the name of St. Wiggin, his disciples, and all that is holy, what is that?" Judith was hit in the face with a dildo. Someone cried, "God black motherfucker!" The commune was emptying, and a crowd of people were pouring towards them. The thudding music grew louder as it led them. "Is it sacrifice time already?" asked Judith. "It can't be," Noah replied. "We were going to have a good old drowning after the wedding, remember? Why does His Eminence look so upset?" Dominic was leading the charge and turning towards them with determination. If you had listened to Reynolds' description of the man, you would hear of his wicked temper, dangerous ideologies, and his disciples spreading everywhere in the city. You would be forgiven for not believing this was the same man. "Out of my way!" he cried, rushing past Noah and Judith. It wasn't that he didn't look the part. He was dressed in his Wiggin robes. His eyes were wide and wild, but in his hands he was waving 2 glowsticks. What's more, he was shaking those glowsticks like an air traffic controller, with rhythm. A brainwashed congregation was one thing. A horde of people following the church leader like they wanted to eat his brains was quite another. They weren't zombies, of course, but something had made them stumble around, groaning like walking dead. My guess would be the hallucinogenic ether mushrooms that's found on the bay. "I'll remember you fondly, brother," called Dominic, waving in glowsticks at his church elder, trusted advisor and father figure, Peter Millicent. You could scour every nightclub, prison cell, and drug den in the city, and you would not find anyone quite so far gone as Peter was. "Oh dear, Judith," Noah exclaimed, "is that a crater on the beach?" That, dear readers, was how it came to be known that the Bray was the last known location of the Capiso Bros, Buddy Owen, Dale Cooper, and Chad Perry. They were very much sought after, and so the adventure began. In a city troubled by corruption, where the highest offices can't be trusted, who do the people have to turn to? Who can they rely on to help them in their time of need? Coldford City has the Hicks Agency, better known as the Good Gang. They are a symbol of support and friendship. Most importantly, when the Shady City is at its shadiest, the badges beam a light that reminds us such a shine still exists. They are named after Detective Joe Hicks, a good man caught up in city violence and struck down in his prime. The Good Gang carry on his name and function by helping those in need, a vision Joe had always sought to bring to life. Agent John Reynolds, a cult deprogrammer and cold case specialist. He never gives up on anyone. Agent Franklin Rhodes, an infiltration expert. He is the most approachable and would find himself welcomed anywhere. Agent Lydia Lowe, found in the field with her specialised motorcycle named Kitty. Last but not least, Agent Kim Adams. Kim is a leader with a fearless disposition. Their resources are limited, but try as they might, they are making a difference. With the help of Breckenridge Financial and a keen interest from CEOs Chick Owen of Owen Inc. and Howard Berman of the Berman Diamond Parade, eyes have been opened and deals have been pricked. The person who had the Good Gang at their most imminent attention as our story begins was a man named Devon, who was rushing along Timeline Main with a bag of jewels in his arms. The bells from Rose Diamond Emporium were screaming their alert. Devon was running as fast as his legs would carry him because Kim Adams was in pursuit. She was the daughter of the famous heavyweight boxer Sonny Adams, better known as the Bournemouth Blizzard, so Devon could only imagine how quickly he would hit the canvas when she did manage to get a hold of him. She was, after all, a champion boxer in her own right. Howard Berman was seated outside the parade at a little table, sipping his morning espresso when Devon and Kim zipped past. "Seth," he called his son, "Rose Diamond has been robbed." Seth, who came to the entrance to check on the commotion, caught a shriek from Devon. "You're not human, woman!" "Not to worry," said Howard. "It seems Agent Adams has it handled." "Isaac will be sorry you missed that," Seth commented. Seth's elder cousin had taken quite a shine to Agent Adams, having seen her give statements to the news. She's just so in control," he had said. Seth had been puffing a joint at the time, so he didn't ask his cousin to elaborate. I believe the sentiment was pretty clear anyway. The Bermans could still hear Devon shriek as he reached the top of Timeline. He stopped to catch his breath, but he couldn't stay stationed for long because Agent Adams was willing to go full 12 rounds if needed to. Devon sobbed as he took to his feet again. "Stay with me, you fucking robot!" he was crying. He found himself in a thoroughfare of City Main. He was going to take his chances with the Loyalists rather than continue to fight it out with Kim. Well, when I say fight it out, what I mean is run away from. He rushed into the busy street, still clutching his loot to his chest. He had lost Kim, it seemed. He kept looking behind himself, though, to check. He had been so distracted looking for the agent, he hadn't noticed a boulder-shouldered figure close in on him. Devon collided. "What's the deal there, Devon? You know robbery's whack." "Ah, shit, Agent Reynolds!" Devon cried and took to his heels yet again. He was starting to run out of puff. He heaved his way back along City Main, stepping dangerously close to the pen auction house. "Fuck it," Devon cried. "Just let the damn pens take me." As luck would have it, 2 of the 3 notorious Penn triplets were in prison anyway. Agent Rhodes was currently in protection detail for Penn mother Rita. He managed to find a secluded spot. There were no signs of Reynolds or Kim. Devon grasped with relief. The way one might if they had managed to outrun a cheetah. That was when his transport arrived, that all-important getaway car. It was a nondescript blue vehicle that was so close to scrap it could be ditched easily enough. The struggling exhaust was sweet sound of freedom. That sound was spoiled by the purr of Kitty. Agent Lowe rode her bike to the edge of the alleyway. The getaway driver was taking no chances. He leapt from the car and dashed off towards the financial district, leaving Devon behind. "Oh, come on," Devon pleaded. Lydia held his gaze. She smiled. She winked. Boom! The getaway car was downgraded from scrap metal to simmering pile of junk. That was no use to anyone. Devon turned. His survival instincts were about all that was pushing him along at this point. The bag of jewels were pulled from his hand, and a southpaw jab landed on his chin for good measure. Robbery in progress, no problem for the good gang. "Good morning, Chloe," was the polite welcome Harbour House constant Chloe Grover was given at the Hill of Beans coffee shop in Swanton, just a short walk from the rehab facility. Harbour House was a big financial property, and thanks to the efforts of Dragon Elizabeth Beckenridge, the good gang had been granted access to its support and resources. Agent Reynolds had found himself a comfortable home there. His little office wasn't much to look at, but it had everything he needed. If it gave him the chance to help others, well then, that was just groovy. Lydia and Franklin loved the views along the docks. Franklin had taken many a picture for his amateur photography group. Lydia felt there was no better place for Kitty to claw along than the scratching post of the Chamberlain Harbour. Chloe wasn't an agent, but she collected those coffees which Kim assured her was one of the most important jobs of all, especially when Elizabeth insisted on daily 8 AM progress reports. "You keep us fueled, pet," insisted Kim. Chloe prided herself on doing her part. She got the order just right every time. A double shot Americano for Kim, a latte for Lydia, the cat liked her milk. There was an espresso for Reynolds, who was always on the go and needed something sharp. Finally, it was a mocha for Franklin. He was fine with it until he started counting the calories, and again, then he would switch to low fat. "Have you tried a new app, Chloe?" asked the barrister, Kevin. "I can have your order ready for coming in." Chloe smiled in her shy, unassuming way. "I like to come in and talk," she responded. "I don't have the app." "No, that's no problem," Kevin assured. "I'm happy you come in. I'll get your order for you." Kevin was smitten with the lovely Chloe. Damaged, broken, he only saw her as the pretty young girl who liked to order her coffees in person. "You agents got a real job in your hands," Chloe giggled. She wasn't an agent, but she had a job to do. She could do her part. Mr. Faddo, the florist next door, always gave her the best bloomers. They wouldn't sell, but they would at least grace the reception of Harbour House with beauty and colour. The coffees in hand, Chloe returned. "Thanks, Chloe. I'm getting good vibes today," said Reynolds as he accepted his beverage and tried to piece together the situation on Hatfield Bay. "I'm going to regret this later, but, girl, you are a saviour," said Franklin as he took full fat. Chloe figured he had nothing to worry about. Never before had she seen such a toned body. Lydia had wrapped an arm around her shoulder. "Those flowers are so pretty," she said. Beverly, the Harbour House matron, agreed. Chloe had done a good job. Finding Kim Adams would take Chloe to one of the private rooms on offer. She was in the midst of one of her early morning video updates with Elizabeth Beckenridge. "It was all over the news," Elizabeth reflected on the chase and eventual apprehension of Devon. "Not my problem, Elizabeth," Kim responded. She accepted her coffee from Chloe with a polite, "Thanks, Pip." "I'm trying to make something of your agency, and I can't do that when you're throwing it out there like I'm some kind of media whore." Kim skilled. The CDN helicopter flew overhead. "I told you, it's not my problem." Coldford-level and Elizabeth Felton Cryer were contenders. Kim had no time for her petty rivalries with the Cappy. "I'm signing off," said Kim, more of a warning than statement. "No, you're not," Elizabeth retorted. "The agency is getting a lot of press attention," Elizabeth Beckenridge was saying. "It's hard not to draw attention when you're having to chase robbers down the streets of Maine." "It looked really good though," Elizabeth grinned. "Devon gave you quite the runaround, didn't he?" Kim frowned a little. "How do you know his name was Devon?" Elizabeth shrugged. "He just has one of those faces. He looks like a Devon, don't you think? Some might have argued he was a Clive or a Stephen even, but no, he was definitely a Devon." Kim's frown deepened into a scowl. "Did you stage that robbery?" Now that Kim thought about it, the getaway car did look like a prop that would have rolled out of Central Theatre. "If I had, I would be thoroughly disappointed," was Elizabeth's response. "That damn Coldford-level captured it with their damn stupid helicopter." "It's not my concern," Kim assured again. "How did you know the kid's name was Devon?" Elizabeth, ignoring Kim's question, continued musing over the CDN helicopter. "I mean, anyone can have a helicopter these days. There are a dime a dozen in Luan. It's easy enough to get good footage when you're in the air. How dare they cover my agents?" "The news footage isn't my concern," Kim mourned with a little more impatience. "It should be," said Elizabeth. "How the press tells your story will determine how you are accepted by the city. What's more, that dreaded helicopter had no business flying over my agents." "We're not your agents," Kim explained heatedly. When a Beckenridge had given money over for something, unfortunately to them, it was one and the same thing. "We just want to do our job and help people," said Kim. "My agents have a job to do, and we don't have time to care about which newspaper gets the exclusive." "Then perhaps next time you'll do something about the CDN following you around like a pervy priest." "Such as?" "Well, I don't know. Shoot the damn helicopter out of the sky for all I care. News helicopters are so cliché anyway. Try having a news tank or news boat even." That was when Dan and I found Kim shaking her head so vigorously we were hesitant to approach. "Good morning, Kim," I tried hesitantly. "We're in the middle of a meeting," Elizabeth called. This meeting is over, said Kim. Elizabeth glared at Dan and I. Shouldn't you both be at work? Not your writers, Liz, I answered for us. Such was the price we paid to use the resources of Filton Press. Whole world's gone mad, Elizabeth complained. Have Kitten call me. At least then I can talk to someone with some sense. Kitten was the pet name Elizabeth had given to Lydia. She reminded her so much of her main character in a series of novels she had written. At least there was one agent free of the dragon's fiery breath. Nope, wait a minute, Elizabeth interrupted herself. I'm not going anywhere. What had held her attention was the reason for Dan and I's visit. Hello, Charles, she grinned. If you can imagine the heat from that dragonfire, the temperature of the room escalated exponentially. Charles Chickham, better known as the Cappy, held Elizabeth's gaze. Elizabeth, he responded. He was a man who always stood with a natural air of confidence. He was particularly cocksure this morning because his legal team, headed by his brother Ronnie, had already fended off the Beckenridge Sharks in their quest to sue them for the footage of the Good Gang. This was the kind of petty rivalry among the rich that Kim had no time for. Directing his attention to Kim, the Cappy said, Agent, I find myself in need of your services quite urgently. I'm hoping that you and your team, with discretion, can help me in a matter of some importance. No, said Elizabeth. I'll be most happy to compensate you for your trouble. I've done some research and I believe you are most qualified to help me. No, said Elizabeth again with more force. Kim turned to the screen. Goodbye, Elizabeth, she said. That's not... Before Elizabeth could finish her spiel, the video call was switched off. What seems to be the problem? Well, as you're aware, a lot has happened. My son Bernard, you're familiar with. I've been trying to keep him out of trouble. After his grandfather's unfortunate demise, I requested he keep his head low. He has a problem, you see. A filthy drug habit, which over the years I've been trying to remove from him. I can warn him until the cows come home, but trouble still always seems to find him. Now he's gone missing along with his Capasol brothers, Chad Perry and Dale Cooper. This only spells more trouble. I'm asking you to help a boy who's a penny short of the full coin if you find him. Perhaps you can take pity on him on account of his stupidity. Buddy Owen was already under suspicion for a host of crimes. After the attack at a Mac funeral, the city was a particularly nervous place. The Cappy was keen on making sure his son hadn't been caught up in it all. I was curious to find out how much of the mess they had been responsible for. This was why Dan had suggested the Good Gang as being the ones capable of finding him and his bros, ultimately bringing him back home. The bros were not the kind of figures you preferred out of sight and out of mind. If you can return him sober, I'm sure it will give us all a cause for easier sleep, the Cappy surmised in his pitch to Kim. That it would indeed. The first step was to trace the bros' steps. Hatfield Bay had been shaken a lot recently. The Church of St. Wiggin was gaining heavier support. They were being drawn further and further off the island, spreading their word. They believed the city dwellers were a sinful lot, hell-bound and damned. When it came to light exactly what had been brought upon them, I can't help but gain a better understanding as to why they felt this way. Word of a great commotion there had given Kim reason to believe that was the most likely last place in the greater Coldford district the bros had been. In order to discover any information on the island, one had to visit the church which sat central, overlooking the shores. Well, they were definitely here, Kim exclaimed to Lydia as the two agents climbed the dunes to the church's entrance. There was no mistaking it. A great graffiti on the side of the church read the letters KSO. The Cock and Ball Sandcastle may also have provided a clue. The next clue for the agents was the cries of frustration from His Eminence. Those three walking curses! Look at what they've done to our church! The pews were filled with party streamers. Peter Millicent looked up when he saw the agents approach. This would be the agents who contacted us, Your Eminence. Dominic caught them in his gaze, still seething. Are you here to do something about this? He asked, probably in reference to the mess left behind. The three frat boys, you said they were here? Kim began, speaking to Peter, who seemed the more reasonable of the two, despite being on some kind of come-down. Oh, they were here all right, Dominic was the one to reply. Thought they would start a party! A party! He means they spread drugs and alcohol around the commune, agents, Peter explained. The whole field of mush is gone. Do you realise how long it takes to grow those bastards? Peter nodded. He means they devoured an entire crop of heathers. They are something of a staple over here. For calling it a miracle, Dominic raged. They're going to be seeing fucking colours for the rest of their lives. I've never known anyone to eat so much and survive. It was quite remarkable, said Peter. Dominic shook his head. He stomped forward again, still in rage. When you do get hold of them, you can bring them back here. I want them to answer for the mess they've made. Kim didn't like Dominic's attitude. Reynolds had warned her he may be a tough nut to crack. She warned him for a second time to take a step back. Where did you send them? Kim asked Peter, assuming the Wigan Church had chased them off. Where did I send them? Dominic interrupted. I would have sent the 3 whoremongers to hell. 7 of our young lassies pregnant, and until they pop the sprogs, we don't know which one did it. Peter maintained his calm demeanour. He was nursing a terrible headache. Some of the girls really enjoyed their company. Aye, a change of pace, they said. Some folks thought they were really having a party. Nah, right, Bart? Dominic scowled at the monk named Bartholomew, who was at that point scrubbing a crude image of what was supposed to be Buddy Owen from their church wall. I would guess Buddy Owen, given the blonde hair that had been scrawled on. So where did they go? Kim asked. We believe they decided to go to the Great States. It would seem they couldn't find what they were looking for here. They couldn't be saved, cried Dominic. They really couldn't. He had stepped forward again, so Kim warned him. You done? Dominic frowned most severely. Am I done? This is my church, you! Bam! With a swift punch, Dominic was sent to the floor. She and Lydia had heard all they needed to. They removed themselves from the church, not wanting to waste any more time. Dominic continued to lay on his altar. Are you okay, Your Eminence? Peter asked. Dominic laid his hands on his chest. I'm fine, he replied in a surprisingly calm way. I'm just going to lie here for a little while. As you wish, said Peter. He was starting to feel sick again anyway. It was discovered by the Good Gang that the Bros had retreated to their home in the land of the Great States. What did they find there? What trouble could possibly befall them there? Well, all manners of trouble as it happens, but in this instance their journey had taken them to a brothel that boasted budget pussy. It wasn't exactly a creative name for a brothel, but since they were in the middle of nowhere, I suppose their advertising had to be straight to the point. The neon signs had been like a beacon to the Bros, calling them home. From what had been last heard of them, it seemed they had limited resources, and Buddy, as the in facto leader of the trio of enlightened minds, had claimed some kind of dibs, which meant he was the one to enjoy said whore. I'm all about the boning, he was boasting. He gave a stretch, hoping it showed his swimmer's body in its most glowing of lights. The whore they had chosen was one named Peaches. Chosen wasn't accurate. When they asked if the cost could be spread over 3 cards, Peaches had been all the madam would allow. She wasn't much to look at. One eye kept closing over in a nervous twitch. She kept giving what she thought was a seductive laugh, but really sounded like a chipmunk being raped by a baboon. Those were Buddy's words, not mine. What was most stand out about Peaches was the pungent smell she gave off, and it did not smell like any kind of fruit, never mind peaches. It was like a urine smell, if urine could go sour like milk. Again, these are Buddy's thoughts, not my own. Despite all this, Peaches was keen to please her customer. She dropped a heavy bag on the bed between Buddy's legs. What you got, balls? He cried. But then he grinned and chuckled. What you got in there? Peaches grinned. Her grin was supposed to be flirty, he supposed. It made her eye droop like she had been hauled off the street for some back alley treatment. She continued her tease. From the bag she drew a feather. Ooh, Buddy giggled. Naughty. She kept digging into her bag of delights. That looks like it's gonna hurt. Kinky. She kept digging. She had to stop to cough some phlegm onto her palm. But she kept pulling out treat after treat. Buddy's face fell, his lips pouted. What are you going to put that? More chipmunk rapey giggles, more phlegm. Buddy's face fell even further. It was almost as low as the boner kill he was now experiencing. Oh, he bolted. That's fucking disgusting. Meanwhile, downstairs, Chad Perry and Dale Cooper had emptied every card they possessed. This is a library card, the madam warned. A buxom woman named Shotgun Sally, and this was not because she rode in the passenger side of the car. What do we do, bruh? Coops whispered to Chad. Do you think he's finished yet? You may be familiar with the dine and dash system. It seems the Bros were operating something similar, only with whorehouses. Fix that itch and ditch that bitch, I believe is what they called it. Sally was hearing none of it. If your bro's dick is even so much as left his pants, your son's a bitch is owe me. Bruh, Coops panicked. Buddy's cock will most definitely have left his pants, bruh. It was too late. Sally had drawn the firearm she was most famous for. Bud! Screamed Chad. Luckily Buddy came stumbling down the steps at that point. He was still heaving from whatever final trick Peaches had pulled from her bag. She pissed on me, and it fucking burned, bro! He was crying. She pissed on me and it burned. If the good gang were to chase the bros across to the great states, that was going to have to be their mantra. Can't believe this, Dan was exclaiming as we arrived at Coldford Airport. I was there to see the departure of the agents. Dan was present because he had been lucky enough to be granted the opportunity to accompany Lydia and Kim as they sought the three bros, and, by the Cappy's instruction, bring Buddy home sober. Thanks to Owen Air, they were to travel in luxury. Any expenses or damage they met would be compensated by Owen coin. Kim had been particularly keen on the idea of Dan joining them. Experience told her things could get dangerous. Dan was more than a civilian, though. As previously mentioned, he was a documentarian, and as such had a natural skill for keeping things documented. I had opted to remain in Coldford and follow from there as the story continued. Working together, we would provide the tale of the good gang's mission. I know you're super busy, Sam, Dan had said, but I really appreciate it. Working with Sam Crusoe. You know, if something told me a few years ago that I'd be working with Sam Crusoe, I would never have believed him. I'd say, you're nuts. Me and Sam Crusoe? Yeah, right. Dan was something of a fan, and I was flattered by his enthusiasm. In truth, I was just as thrilled as he was to observe the good gang in action. I know how it sounds, but I hope you don't mind I ask you to water the plants. It's fine, Dan, I assured. Will you hurry, Dan? Kim called. Good luck, told Lydia. I got it covered, she said confidently. The good gang did have it covered. But as I watched the Owen airplane take off, I couldn't help but wonder what the great states had in store for them.